will give us the opening remark for this evening. And so Abi Oshoba will coming now.
I don't know how to click it. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. I'm very excited to be with you all this evening. My name is Abiodun Oshoba. Most of you know me as Abi. And I want to just say a big thank you to every one of you for being here this evening with us today. We're pleased to have you with us, and I'm very, very excited to welcome you all. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. I'm very excited to be with you all this evening. My name is Abiodun Oshoba. Most of you know me as Abi. And I'm happy to welcome our keynote speaker, our inaugural keynote speaker, our moderator, our facilitators, our panelists. I am the founder and CEO of the Agile Advisor Africa. I'm also an enterprise business agility coach. I'm an Agile trainer. And I believe that Agile is a state of art beyond being just a mere state of mind. It is the heart that makes transformation happen and evolve until it becomes an organic, interwoven part of a company's culture, as well as employees' default behavior. Today marks the beginning of the Future of Agile series. Today is Sunday, the 5th of July, 2020. And with this series, we're starting with the Future of Agile in Africa and the Middle East. We are very proud to host it today with you all. Before we get started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you who have generously helped us to make this event come together. You have helped us to make it a success with your time, your money, your expertise, your talent. You have been there for us. A special thanks to our sponsors, our partners, our eco partners, our facilitators, our moderators, inaugural keynote speakers, and coordinators within the Agile Advisor. In today's gathering, we would focus on the futuristic effect of small and big African businesses embracing the Agile mindset, how Agile practices can be tailored to fit the uniqueness of African businesses and Africa as a whole, the impacts of African culture on the adoption of Agile mindset and transformation, and the African mindset versus the Agile mindset. We're very happy today to be with thought leaders from Africa who originally are from Africa, sharing their Agile knowledge and experiences. The future of Agile in Africa and the Middle East will change the narrative of several reports that put the adoption of Agile in Africa in a really small percentage. We're here and happy to share our story on Agile adoption and transformation all across Africa and the Middle East. The future of Agile in Africa and the Middle East will provide awareness, understanding, intuition into the adoption and application of Agile mindset, practices, values, and principles across different areas of an organization, business, enterprise, for teams, as well as individuals. Specifically, again, I repeat, for Africa and the Middle East. And of course, we're not going to leave the rest of the world out. The future of Agile will focus and address the unique challenges posed by the diverse cultures found across the different regions, from adoption, agile adoption, to transformation, to accelerating or different things within the organization at the individual level, the team level, as well as at the enterprise level. The future of Agile will go through a series of discussions, and we will carry out surveys. We would be listening to people who would share their stories. We would take contributions from bloggers, and we would also be hearing from Agile thinkers, thought leaders, Agile practitioners, leaders, executives within the Agile environments, Agile enablers, drivers, trainers, community leaders, leaders within the public sector, within the private sector. And all of these results, all of these discussions, survey data, and trends will evolve into an annual report, which will enable us to discover adaptable changes, challenges, and opportunities from year to year across the board. The future of Agile in Africa is hosted by the Agile Advisor Africa. This is the first edition taking place in 2020. It's a 4-part interactive series. The first taking place today, the 5th of July. The second will be on August the 2nd. The third was September 6th. And the fourth one will be October 4th. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I need to leave some time for the rest of the other panelists to be introduced, as well as the inaugural speaker. And I just want to tell you all to make up your mind today to take something away. Make up your mind today to be a part of this, to be a part of history. Make up your mind today to contribute your knowledge, your expertise, to share your story, to be a part of this report that will be generated as the output of this series. And so I just want to say I want to say a warm welcome to every one of you again. And if you have any questions, which I know you will, during the course of this event, you can have access to our Q&A box. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to part 1 of the Future of Agile series. My name is Olusoga Okusami, and I am one of your facilitators for the evening. I would quickly like to take us through the series rules for this session. Our goal will be to accommodate all questions during the time frame of this series. We encourage all participants to ask questions during this session by placing their questions in the Q&A box at the designated time during the series. There will be a Q&A session after the inaugural keynote, so kindly place any questions you may have in the Q&A box. During the question and answer session with the moderator and the panelists, the Q&A box will be reserved for the moderator's questions. Participants are requested to hold on to their questions until after the question and answer session with the moderator and the panelists is completed. Once the question and answer session is completed, participants are welcome to place their questions in the Q&A box, as there will be a Q&A session after the moderator's session with the panelists. This session will be streamed live on YouTube for all attendees who are unable to join via Zoom. After the session, a recording of the Future of Agile interactive session will be posted on our YouTube channel. I will hand over now to my co-facilitator, Itohan. And this session is being streamed live right now, and you can access it. If you're unable to access via the Zoom room, you can access it on YouTube. I will hand over now to my co-facilitator, Itohan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sugar. It's an honor to be here. It's particularly exciting for us to kick off the future of Agile in Africa and in the Middle East. We're very honored to be part of this. And we've had a lot of support in bringing this dream to reality. And at this point, we really want to appreciate our sponsors and our partners who have saw this dream with us and followed through, and they've agreed to be part of the journey all the way to the very end. Like Abby said at the beginning, it's a 4-part sessions. This is the first, but already we have supporters and partners and sponsors that are ready to go with us on the long haul. So we'd like to just appreciate them very, very quickly. First off, we'd like to appreciate the Agile Alliance. Thank you for your sponsorship. We'd also like to appreciate Gracious Travels and Tours Limited. Thank you. We know that at this time, when business do seem to be very challenged, you still decided to be agile in your thinking. Thank you for your support. We would like to thank the Business Agility Institute. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We also like to appreciate the Orchard Solutions Technology. Thank you for your sponsorship. It is greatly appreciated. We would like to thank Banking Payments and Context. We thank you for your sponsorship. And finally, we'd like to thank Abby Mentors. These are sponsors for this event today. I would also like to appreciate our ecosystem partners. These are partners that are with us on the Agile journey from its conception to where we are today. They've been with us all through, and they're committed to lighting the flame of Agile all across Africa. So we'd like to appreciate them as well. Anytime we call on them, they're always there to support, us in whatever ideas that we're coming up with. So we'd like to appreciate, first off, Access Bank. We appreciate your partnership. We would like to also extend our appreciation to Africa FinTech Foundry. They're always there when we call. Thank you for your support. We also like to appreciate the Agile people. Thank you very, very much. We acknowledge your support and your partnership. We hold it in high esteem. We also like to appreciate IC Agile, as well as Remote Forever. We appreciate your partnership. Still appreciating, we would like to appreciate 3Line, as well as Sigmark. Yes, I hope I got that correctly, Sigmark. We would like to appreciate Sigmark. And finally, we would like to appreciate Caleb Consultant. Thank you to all our partners. We really do appreciate your support. So, as we mentioned before, it's an evening where we'll be hearing a lot about Agile, where Agile thought leaders will be sharing the ideas and enlightening us about what they think about what the future of Agile will be. And I've been given the singular honor to introduce the keynote speaker. I'm particularly excited to be doing this. So I'll just be telling us a little bit about our keynote speaker this evening. So our keynote speaker is an international Agile consultant. He's a coach and a trainer with over 11 years practical experience, and he has a client list that boasts of globally recognized brands like Tesco, the Metro newspaper, Capital, Betfair, Berkeley Groups, and the likes. He specializes in multi-million Agile transformation program, where he coaches teams and companies on how to cut costs, reduce risk, and deliver high quality products to markets a lot quicker. He is the author of Waterfall to Agile and also a practical guide to Agile transition. He's also the founder of Agile TV. He is a certified Scrum professional, a certified Scrum master, a certified Agile extreme manufacturing black belter, an international speaker, and a blogger. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Ade Shokoya.
Thank you very much for...
You can jam our hands digitally if you can.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to share my, sure.
Mr. Ade Shokoya, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you very much for that introduction. I am humbled and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So I only have 20 minutes. We have quite a bit to cover. I would ask that if you've got any questions, please do keep it till the end. As you heard, here's just a little bit about my background and some of the clients that I've worked with over the years. But the key thing for me is really I'm a student of this space. As many of you will recognize, Agile is constantly changing. In the over 15 years that I've been practicing Agile, it's constantly changing. And the key thing is, I would say, is that I am a student of this space. So without further ado, let's just have a quick look at some of the numbers. Now, here's a forecast which looks at, or for the last few years.
Mr. Ade, please, can you speak up? We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me better now? Is that better?
Yeah,
Is that better?
I see that you're speaking, but we're not, you're not very audible.
Okay.
Okay. Can you go ahead now? We still can't hear you.
How about now? Is that better?
Yes,
Much
awesome,
better.
awesome.
Okay, awesome, great stuff. Okay, so a few technical issues, but we are Agile, so we respond to change and we keep it moving. So here's,
Sure we do.
of course, yeah, so here's some data that comes from some recent economists who've looked at the forecast of what's happening across Africa. One second, I'm just trying to get rid of this thing that's on here. Okay, here's some data. So here's what I'm going to say. All right, so if you look at it right now, this talks about the economy, real GDP growth across sub-Saharan Africa in the last few years. Particularly, we're looking at 2018/2019. What you'll notice is that while the rest of the world, some of the major economies have been contracting, the economies in some of the majority of the sub-Saharan African countries has been expanding, i.e. has been growing. But this is where the data gets really interesting. If you look at the consumer prices, so basically you could argue that's in effect the cost of living, you'll see that actually for a number of the sub-Saharan African countries whereby the economy has been growing, in effect, the cost of consumer prices has been going up. And you'll also notice that actually can be some major jumps in those prices as well. So if you look at the top line, which is, where's my thing here? If you look at, for example, what we see with the top, apologies again. So if you look at what's happening in the United States, you see that when their economy contracted by about a point, the consumer prices went down, right? You can start seeing that. But if you look at what's happening with sub-Saharan African, even though the economies might be strong, we're seeing that the consumer prices are significantly going up. So in effect, from a business point of view, that would say to me that, okay, for the rest of the world, when they have got less coming in, less is going out. But in some of those sub-Saharan African states or countries, what we're seeing is that actually, even though that it seems like a lot is coming in, a lot more is going out. And we could argue that maybe because of the high amount of exports or exported products that are coming into these countries, the additional tax that may be levied on that, all the other great stuff. But also what we do know on the ground is that actually a lot of that is being passed over to the people, the poorest people in society. So i.e. the cost of living for those people is going up while their income is not necessarily going up either. So therefore, things are just getting a bit tighter for them at the bottom of it. Now, if you see, one of the things it talks about here previously was actually, it was recommending that in the next 2 years or so that there's going to be a 3.9% significant growth. Once again, just be clear, I'm not an economist, I'm just reading it as I see it. But as we know, based on what's happened with COVID, we could just scrap that. In effect, it'd be interesting to see what's going to be happening because as we see, a lot of the major economies are contracting in a big way, and it's likely, I think very confidently, we can suggest that actually the impact is going to be felt in a big way in Africa, and mainly by the people who are the poorest. Here's also some other interesting data. Okay, if we look at the overall African population in 2020 is estimated at 742 million people. That's just an estimate, but it's expected to double to 2.4 billion in 2050. And this is based on the Focus Economics consensus forecast in 2018. Now, out of that, almost 60% of Africa's population are aged under 25, making it the youngest continent on the world. There's predictions by 2010 that population would have being equivalent to the entire size of the European population. And by 2013, it's been predicted that we're actually looking at 42% of the world would be made up of African youth. Good numbers on the surface of it. But we've got about almost 16 million of them are unemployed. Now, here's the thing about it. We know that these young people, they're educated, they're smart, they're innovative, they are thinkers, but unfortunately for a number of reasons, and we won't have the time to be able to cover all of those reasons on this talk here, but for a number of reasons, they are not getting access to the right opportunities. So for example, I was in Nigeria earlier on this year, and I had a guy who was my driver, great guy, but he's a graduate. He's somebody who spent many years in university, he's graduated, but because there are no opportunities for him to go and actually do what he's spent so many years like learning, he's in effect just being a driver. And that's quite common. We're seeing that there's a large degree of unemployment. But as you're gonna hear throughout this talk here, we're talking about actually, we're now moving into a digital age. We're moving into an age where things are changing. Things are changing rapidly. And this is unlocked potential. Why do I say that? Well, here's why. We're about to go into the we're in the fourth industrial revolution. You may have heard of 4IR. That's in effect the fourth industrial revolution. You can see here, we've been through the steam engine part, mass production, computers and automations, which, you know, you might say we're making that transition over into that fourth industrial revolution. But that provides so many opportunities for us to be utilizing this large number of young people who could actually start creating innovative products which not only speak to the African market, but also speak to the wider market. I mean, if you think about it, mobile banking came from Kenya, right? They used that to sort out a local need, but now it's something that most of us around the world enjoy and use. And for some of us, we can't even live without. And once again, if we start thinking about the numbers, we spoke before about the youth, right? And we've got 16.3 million or whatever those numbers are of them unemployed, not able to necessarily fulfill and live out their full potential. It's interesting, if you look at some of the top companies, tech companies in the world, they're called the FAM or whatever you want, like Facebook, the Amazons, the Apples, the Microsoft, the Googles. If you look at those founders' ages, their ages were from the ages of about 19 to 32. Those companies combined, I think that they have a combined net worth or capitalization or whatever you want to call it of over 4 trillion, right? That's how much they're generating. This came from people who, when they were in their prime, you might argue, were able to go away and create these concepts which have generated so much income for the specific countries. Incidentally, a lot of them or all of them come from America, but they're generating all of that. And now we have this opportunity with this fourth industrial revolution, which opens up the playing fields. We can argue for whatever reasons that Africa hasn't been able to fully take advantage of all of those previous other revolutions, but right now it's prime for the taking. The barriers to entry are very low. There are new emerging technologies. There's technologies that are already being used on the continent. There's technologies that are being created on the continent, which could help to level the playing field or even provide Africa with an opportunity to leapfrog and become really competitive on the global markets in so many different areas. The African Development Bank, they did a study, so they looked into what the implications of the fourth industrial revolution might look like for Africa. And one of the things that they've come up with, which I'm sure we can all agree, is actually this would change the way the continent, people on the continent live their lives, how they work, how they just in general live their lives and are. And they've also, while looking at it, saying that Africa is very well poised to be able to take advantage of this fourth industrial revolution and actually really to miss out on it wouldn't be an option. Of course, we could say that everything is an option in life, but to miss out on it at this moment in time, with all the opportunities that are available, with all the technology that's easily accessible, wouldn't necessarily be something that we should conceive about. Now, in the little time that I've got left, I just want to quickly take you through to look at some of the technology trends which are available, which a lot of the technologists are looking at and saying these are going to have the biggest impact over the next decade on the world, and how we could be taking advantage of some of those things. For example, digital platforms. Digital platforms, we're all consuming it. Right now, we're consuming a digital platform through Zoom. It's a digital platform. And even as we mentioned, those top tech companies like your Facebooks, your Amazon, all of these are just platforms which are being created, which people are utilizing, which are then generating money, which are then also generating peripheral jobs and opportunities for people globally. They're changing the way that we interact. I mean, if you think about it, we've been hearing about VUCA, right? So the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And I think COVID-19, the pandemic we've experienced recently, is a live example of just the type of world we live in, how rapidly and how fast things can change, and how demands and needs are changing. We're seeing that a lot across many organizations as well. It's like, how do we now change the way that we work in order to be able to exist in a new world? Because change will never be as slow as it currently is. It's digital platforms. These young people, if we create the right opportunities for them, could be building and creating digital platforms which speak to the African market, but also speak to the markets globally. There are many of them who exist already in Africa, but if we can funnel more opportunities, create apprenticeships, create from school or university programs, whereby we're enabling these young people to bring their minds into these areas, then of course we could start creating them. If you think about it, Elon Musk, how much is he worth now? 19.2 billion, South African. Taught himself to code. At the age of 12, he sold his first video game for 500. By the age of 28, he had, based on where he'd invested and done some other things, he had 22 million, and the rest is history. Like we said, we see all the great stuff he's doing. So that is all there. The information or Internet of Things, right? We're already using that technology, the ability to connect our devices to other devices, the ability to be able to be remote and be able to access things like cameras, or to be able to feed data into other technologies. All of this already exists. How about we create the space and the ability for these young people who are smart, who are driven? We already know that these guys, they will work really hard, creating some context for them to also be able to create more and more Internet of Things type gadgets or devices. We're seeing it, it's rife. We're using it all the time. Even if you're standing at a bus stop and you see the times pop up, Internet of Things is part of what we do, to the point that some of us don't even realize it. It's just there. Agri-tech. Africa has got so much arable land. Agri-tech is a big thing. I mean, over in the UK, which doesn't have as much arable land as we do, they're investing quite a significant amount in agri-tech. What are we talking about there? We're talking about the technology where you can have sensors which actually tell you the nutrients that are needed in the ground, when's the best time to plant certain crops, when's the best times to actually harvest certain crops. All of this type of technology, right, is available, is readily available out there. We could create an industry around that. Traditionally, Africa has been agricultural. So there's all of those opportunities that are available for these young people. Drones and unmanned aerial vehicles, all of that type of stuff. We're already seeing that drones have already been used. Google's talking about how they're actually going to start doing some deliveries with drones. Well, why can't we start utilizing that in places in Africa? We talk about we don't have the infrastructure in terms of roads and other things to the degree that we would like them to be. But does this not present us potentially an opportunity whereby we can actually maybe create electronic grids, whereby we can actually start flying drones to do pickups and drop-offs and other great stuff? I don't know. These young people are able to figure it out. Blockchain. Blockchain for me is one of the major technologies that can have a really big impact on what we do in Africa. Some of the issues that we have with buying land and distribution of assets, that would be solved by the blockchain solutions. We have centralized places whereby that data or the contracts are kept. We could use that for things like voting. We could use that for IDs. You can use that for health. There's so many opportunities there. Many of you have heard of seen some of my other talks about 3D printing. Now that there's 3D and 4D printing, 3D printing where you can print houses, you can print cars. If you've seen some of my talks around that, the videos I show, or even body parts. whether aesthetic or actually real, combined with biotechnology. All of that is available. We can start putting these young minds to be doing that. Intelligent smart places, utilizing on Internet of Things. So we're talking about smart cities, all that type of stuff. Digital twins, for me, that's also a significant piece of technology that can change the way and reduce the risk and costs associated with twins. In effect, digital twins is just taking something from the physical world and then duplicate it in the digital world so that you can actually play around many variables. You could do that with things like building cities. You could actually work out, okay, what would that look like? And what were the very different variables? You can even actually map human systems, i.e. human beings, and actually work out, okay, if we administer this type of medication to them, what would be the impact? You can play around with also many different things from a computer screen before you even actually start building it in the physical world, which significantly opens up the possibilities of what could be achieved. Robotics, we know that that's a big area, especially when you start combining that with AI, big data, and all that type of stuff. How about start utilizing some of these brains towards that, creating these technologies? Like, again, could be for the local market, for the wider market. AI, artificial intelligence, as you know, a lot of these technologies are driven by that. The ability in this world of complexity to be able to shift through the numbers and shift through data that the human brain may not be able to in a very fast way. Biotechnology, another major one. We've got many different conditions or situations in Africa. Why can't we use biotechnology? You can start combining a lot of these together, biotechnology with agri-tech, so you can start actually looking at creating the right fertilizers to help increase the yield on certain things. You could even start looking at things like malaria, why we could create genetically modified mosquitoes, which when they mate with other mosquitoes which carry the malaria, they actually end up killing themselves. Or you could actually then use digital twins to actually work out, okay, what would be the impact on the ecology if we end up getting rid of all mosquitoes? And then you could maybe fine tune that genetically modified mosquito to actually just annihilate the carrying of the malaria. There's just so many things we could do with biotechnology. Once again, I'm shooting through this because I can't really speak to it much in depth because of the time, but there's so many opportunities. Cloud and edge computing, the cloud is making all of this possible as well. The fact that now we can store data in different places and access it from different different places, which makes IoT and all of these technologies possible. Edge computing, the fact that we can now start processing a lot more data on different devices. And then 5G, don't know what you think about 5G, but this seems like this is going to be a game changer because we're going to be able to send more data quicker, receive data a lot quicker, and process it a lot quicker. What are the impacts of that if we create that? And I'm sure some of the panelists will be able to talk about their experience and some of the companies on the ground in Africa that are already doing it. But how about we introduce this in a big way? Maybe this is a new economy. We could forget it. Well, in my mind, if you start thinking about just relying on petrol and oil and all those things, the world is changing. It's changing fast. This is available. The barriers to entry are significantly lower for us to be able to introduce it. And as we've established, we have the minds who can innovate and create these things, not just for an African market, but for a global market. For me, the cheetah, that represents agility. As you know, it can hit really fast speeds and it can change direction when it's going after a gazelle. And if you think about it, the cheetah is a native of Africa. Agile, well, there's so many different definitions, but I like to keep things simple. Ability to respond to change. Personally, I like to even say it's the reducing the risk and cost associated with change. How about we can start bringing that in? And all of this is, we're doing it already, it's happening. We can easily bring those things in. Behind it, you've got 4 guiding values. We won't have time to dig into the 12 principles as well, but just think about it. Individuals, interactions of our processes and tools. In Africa, that's natural for us, individuals and interactions. Just go down to the market and see the interactions, the bartering, the individuals, the fact that we need to deal with people. Africa is a very humanistic contact type society. So individuals, interactions, that's baked into our DNA. The next value would be working software over comprehensive documentation. But I would like to suggest that maybe for Africa, functionality of a form. We do that already. If you go, those of you who've been to Africa, different parts of Africa, you see it. It's more about actually, does it function right? Does this thing solve a problem? Not so always necessarily worried about, especially when you're talking about at the end of society whereby there may not be that much disposable income. It's more about actually, does this thing work? Can we make it work, right? And does it really have to look good? No, which also helps because one of the things we've got to be looking at in the market for Africa is how do you make it cheap, easily accessible, simple. Customer collaboration, once again, we see that a lot in Africa. Even when it comes down to doing deals, people like to meet, people like to sit down, and things change. And so usually there's some form of collaboration that's happening in terms of how do we respond to change, which brings us to that thing of the final one, which is responding to change over following a plan. Africa is great at responding to change. We've been responding to change. We respond to change. This is part of our DNA. This is how we operate. So you're going to hear a lot more, maybe from some of the other speakers, about the mechanics and the breakdown and the processes of what agility is. But I really encourage you to start thinking on a larger scale. The people who can do this, some of them are on this call. There's many other people who are from Africa, who understand the way Africa works, who have this skill set, the knowledge, the experience. We've done it for multiple organizations around the world, in multi-billion organizations. And so in effect, it's how do we now combine that, bring that to the public sector, private sector. And like I said, for me, the focus is going to be how do we utilize the population, the youth population, who have so much potential to actually start improving the conditions and lives of those in Africa, and then also exporting that technology to a wider market globally. My time is up. I really wish I had a lot more time to spend with you to dig more into some of this, but here's my details anyway, for those of you who may want to reach out, may be interested in whatever, finding out more, asking any questions. Here's my details. And with that, I will hand it back over to the panelists. Thank you.
The fourth industrial revolution, and as a continent, we need to be prepared, because right now, because of the way the world is, we're on a level playing ground. So we need to get working. There are so many opportunities to look at, from digital platforms to agri-tech to even genetically modified mosquitoes. The list is endless. The world is changing, so we have to change with it. We have the minds, we have the people, we have the resources. All we have to do is collaborate and get it going. The most, I think the takeaway for me would be that, we are a native of agility. And what do I mean by that? That the cheetah represents agility, and the cheetah is a representative of Africa. So on this note, I'd like to hand over to my co-facilitator. He'll be anchoring the keynote question session, Mr. Tunde Giwa. Thank you, Mr. Ade, once again, for a very insightful session.
All right, thank you very much, Ade. That was very insightful, and I always enjoy your sessions. I mean, I remember you from, when was this, like 4 years ago? And a lot of what I learned from your session is still with me till now. So thank you very much for that. So we have one question actually, and I would, can you see the question, Ade? Ade?
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
All right, yeah, fantastic. I can hear you now. All right, great.
Yeah, I'm having a few technical issues. Bear with me 1 second. Let me just see if I can sort this out. Because you can hear me, but I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, go on. Yes.
All right. Okay, cool. So can you see the question though?
Which one?
Yeah, so there's one question in the question Q&A box.
Okay, let me have a check right now. They've had to just support the adoption of all these amazing texts. So how can I see? So here's what I would say to that. We say that all the time, but there's got to be a starting point, right? And we mentioned about the fourth industrial revolution. I think that provides us with a great opportunity to leapfrog that. We talk about electricity being an issue. There are so many different technologies available which provide energy and electricity in different ways. And this is what I'm talking about. We've got to start not looking to what exists and looking inside our own homegrown people to say, actually, here's the unique problem we have. How do you go about solving this problem for Africa? Right? And there's many organizations, fintechs already in Africa looking at solving the problem of electricity. It can be done. When we start talking about infrastructure, and this is the point I was talking about, yes, we can say that, okay, the roads may not be there, but what about the fact that we're talking about unmanned aerial vehicles? In Dubai, they started introducing flying taxis and stuff like that. That's where they're going. Why don't we start actually thinking ahead? I'm saying that if you enable these youths and provide them the support, you've got people here, coaches, trainers. A lot of us have experience doing this with large organizations around the world. I'm saying if you create the environment, these people will create the solutions that will blow our minds. We're talking about internet. The young people can solve that problem. They can solve that. And this, once again, goes back to what I'm talking about. We've got to start thinking as agilists outside of the box. Let's not be constrained by what we see to be so right now. 16.3 million young people are unemployed. We're talking about, in effect, by, 2030, we're going to have a youth population which is twice, or it's going to be twice or equivalent to the size of Europe. Are you telling me that none of these people can solve that problem? So, once again, it's where do we want to start? Do we want to look in terms of what we don't have, or do we want to open up the opportunities for these people to blow our minds? And do you know what? Like I said, these technologies, they will create, you'll see that the world will adopt it. So I think that would be my answer to that question. We are where we are. How do we solve that?
Right, that's great. Thank you. And I think you're making a lot of sense. You know, just like you said, 3 years ago, you said something about encouraging people to use the technology that they have on ground to develop something that will be mind blowing. And you said something about Uber for food. Do you remember that? Uber for food. And I mean, this years after, and it looks like someone took your advice, and it's blowing up. Person is cashing in and it's solving problems, which is what we are about here as well. I also want to say it's an amazing way to encourage the youth. I mean, people coming up and having a problem-solving mindset, and that's amazing. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Let me see. Do we have? I think we had only that one.
Sure. And one thing I would just like to add around that, and this is what I'm saying when we start thinking much bigger. As these people start creating solutions, they then start creating job opportunities around them. So like, for example, we start talking about Google and Apple. A lot of the time we think about the people they directly employ who are on their payroll, but we don't think about the millions who are peripheral to them, who also have jobs and opportunities because of what they've created. So what I'm saying is, with that number of young people, and it's going to be down to people like us to work together, to help the private sectors, to work with the public sectors, to reduce the risk and cost associated with the change, to create those abilities for these young people to come in. And they're going to be hungry, they're going to be driven, just like we see from Dan Pink, that purpose, the mastery, the drive, it will be there.
Fantastic, great. All right, so we have one more question. How can we encourage organizations for more sponsorship to be channeled to the right initiatives that add value and can scale?
Here's one of the things I always say, and I say this even with the clients that I work with. There's things that you can talk about and try to sell to people, or there's the demonstration of value. So my question would be, how do we go in and demonstrate to these organizations, actually, this is in their best interest? This is all about survival. A lot of these organizations, I'm not talking about we do it strictly from an altruistic point of view. There are financial opportunities for everybody to benefit from this. And so it's how do we go in and demonstrate to them that this is valuable and it's in your best interest? Actually creating these programs for these young people is actually potentially one of them is going to give a product that could be worth how much billions down the line. Was it Zoox or one of those ones in America? This was bought, was it by Google or Amazon for 1.2 billion just the other day?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The WhatsApps and co. Yeah. So that's true. Okay, I think we're pressed for time now, so we can move on to our panelists. And I would like to call on our moderator for the day, Omo.
Can everyone hear me?
All right, so I'll hand it over to you. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, Tunde, what now? Good evening, Nigerian time, and for all of my friends from the East Coast, good evening as well, I guess. We're evening now. Oh, afternoon, good afternoon. And for my friends in the UK, good evening as well. This one that you are trying to intimidate me with this profile, and Tunde, I don't understand though. All right, like you can see, that's my name, Omo. And don't try to pronounce the last name if you're not Nigerian, but I can pronounce it for you to make it a little easier. It's called Osemigi. You don't have the accent, so you can pronounce it just like me. So it's fun. It's really, really fun and exciting and thrilling about what we're trying to do in the community in Africa and across the Middle East as well. And I would just say, like I always say in some of the meetings, that I think it's a lot of hard work that has gone into the work that we do. And all of what the Agile Advisor, Abi and our team, the Agile Practitioner of Nigeria and other practitioner associations around Africa and the Middle East have come to do. I just want to say, let's keep the focus and, we're going to get there. We're going to be extremely competitive with the rest of the world. And who knows, we're going to probably surpass what everyone else is doing and be a major player in the global space of all of what we preach and what we are doing in terms of Agile and how it leads to transformation of all the various organizations that we try to push the adoption and the adaptability of this methodology. I think we can go, I guess the first thing we should be doing is to introduce the panelists. I think there was an introduction of our facilitators before. Tunde, am I right? Or should we also introduce the facilitators now? Yeah, I think we should just go straight to the panelists. Correct. So Ibuku, can you just quickly introduce yourself? Okay, I don't know if Ibuku is there. Daniel? Daniel, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Very clearly, Dan.
Yeah, hi, everyone, and good being with you. My name is Daniel Dinner. I am a skilled Agile coach and an enterprise transformation coach, or whatever you call me, but I'm a Scrum Master at Hub. And what I tend to do is I tend to focus on, like, Ade said, the value, the understanding of what it means to be Agile and, why you should be Agile, and doing Agile. I am of mixed heritage, Barbados and Nigeria, but I grew up in Nigeria, so I tend to understand exactly what the pains and the constraints are and the challenges that come with actually adopting Agile and transformation, digital transformation or change, whether it's a mindset. So I've worked with brands here in the UK, such as Net-a-Porter, Mr. Porter, Nissan Car Automotive, WorldPay by FIS and a few others. And I've seen Agile from everything, retail, logistics, healthcare, and everything. And it's very important, what Ade said. And I just believe that as we go ahead, we'll discuss more, but that's a brief summary. I've been in IT for well over 20 years, but I technically grew up with computers way before there was ever even a Windows. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Danny. So we're gonna keep it real short. You know, I'm the Scrum Master today. So I'm just going to say your name and tell me, you know, the space that you're currently in, and that's about it. So Danny, you managed to escape one of my rules for the evening, but it's okay. You're trying to intimidate us with your very good-looking suit this evening, but so we'll let that pass. Victor, quickly, 15 seconds, please. I think you're on mute, Victor.
Hi, dude. Hi, my name is Victor Wandu. I'm an Agile enthusiast. What I spend my time doing is training Agile professionals and guiding leaders through their Agile journey. And that's it. Basically, I'm based in the UK. I'm the founder and guide for the Wakanda Agility Group and the prime consultant for the Q platform. That's it.
Awesome, awesome. Segun Adeniyi.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Well, it's evening where I am. I'm based out of Nigeria, or I'm dialed in from Nigeria. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me on here, Omo and the Future of Agile team. As introduced, my name is Segun Adeniyi. I run a technology hub on behalf of a bank called Africa FinTech Foundry. And my involvement with Agile is primarily from a partnership perspective. I do have some career and functional roles working on Agile transformation programs globally. And but today my involvement is as a partner to the Agile advisor. And a lot of my experience that I will share today comes from my functional capacity working across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. And then, of course, partnering with the Agile advisor. Thank you.
Awesome. And just so you guys know, Segun and myself are colleagues, so I always like to put that out. All right, Adi, 10 seconds, please.
Did you say Adi or Abby?
Oh, no, I said Adi, not Abby.
Right. Hi, I'm Adi, and yeah, just like everybody else, really great to be here. I'm an Agile consultant and coach, have over 20 years experience in a number of different roles, strategic, operational, etc. Experience across a vast array of Agile frameworks, and have spent the last 10 years leading high value data and digital projects. I'm also on the board of the Agile the APON, the Agile Association of Practitioners of Nigeria as well. And I'm very keen to see capacity being built in Africa and in Nigeria, which is one of the most populous, it is indeed the most populous nation of Africa. So I'm really excited to see how business agility can help tap some of that untapped potential that Ade was talking about. And I'm a firm believer that this can happen. We've seen it happen in countries like Japan and China, and I agree that they have different setups. They're more homogenous than Nigeria is, but I believe we have you know, young people who are really skilled and knowledgeable and really can bring to the fore some of those different technologies and really work on those technologies that Ade spoke about. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ali. Carol.
Hi, Omo. Hello, everybody. It's good evening for me, broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm very happy to be here today. So Carol comes from a project management background, which was traditionally waterfall, but I met Agile and I've fallen in love with it, and I now preach it everywhere I go. So I'm an Agile practitioner, I'm a change leader in my organization, and I lead the project management office for a financial institution. My capacity here, of course, is as a member of the Agile Practitioners Association of Nigeria, and I'd like to share experiences with the rest of the panel, talking about how we can scale up Agile in Africa and in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very brief. Myers?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Really good to be here. Miles Hopkins, I'm from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm the founder and CEO of a consulting company called Be Agile. I'm an enterprise business agility strategist and SAFE program consultant. I'm very involved with the Business Agility Institute and play a number of different roles in the Business Agility Institute, and recently also been appointed to the jury of the World Agility Forum, which I'm very excited about. So really looking forward to spending some time with everybody this evening.
Thank you, Myers, and I hope we'll get more seats in on the World Agility Forum jury team. Okay, so you push for that.
Yeah,
right,
definitely.
Good stuff, Myers. Max?
Greetings, everyone. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, in the US. I am Maximilian Emeka Ekesi, and I have worked in corporate America for 20 years now at large enterprises doing agile transformation at Dell and presently at Whole Foods, which is a subsidiary of Amazon. I'm very active within the Austin Agile community where we have 4,000 members, and we like to consider ourselves the Silicon Valley of the South. Thanks for the opportunity. Good to be here with you.
All right, thank you, Max. Antoinette?
Hi there. This is a hello from the southernmost tip of Africa, from Cape Town. So really delighted to be here. My own background is that I probably was one of the first Agilists in Africa 20 odd years ago. I have since specialized in training Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, Enterprise Agile coaches. I do that across the world, and I love to go out there, go and get the best training and coaching capabilities and bring them back home to Africa. So I've lived on other continents, I've enjoyed it, but Africa stays home, and I stick my hand up for anything where we can advance down at the grassroots level what's happening in Africa. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Antoinette. Thank you. Appreciate. And subsequently, we hope these meetings, we can do them, you know, in all of these cities that we all are dialing in from, you know, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Houston, and all of the places that every one of us is calling from today. I think we still have Louisa.
Hi, everyone. The name is Louisa Mensah. I'm originally from Ghana, but I'm now based in London in the UK. I'm a Scrum Master and an Agile coach. I've got an IT background, worked with a number of companies, helping them through their Agile and transformation journey. For me, I believe Agile is a way of life. I love working with teams and seeing them being productive and seeing the you know, the potential of people coming out. And in home in Africa, we have so much potential. So I'm really excited to see how we can use Agile so that we can also stand in the world forum and be able to put our heads right up where we belong for the first time. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Louisa. Someday I need you to help me with that Ghana Ankara material so that I can wear it in our next meeting. All right, I think we still have Ibokun. Ibokun, can you introduce yourself very briefly now? If you can hear me. I'm not sure if we still have Ibokun, but Shoga, Tunde, you guys please help me check if we still have Ibokun on the call. I think we can go right to the questions. I am very sure that we all know the rules. Let's keep it straight to the answer. Let's have a very robust and frank conversation. And then, okay, I've just been told that Ibokun for some reason is not able to be present right now. All right, good stuff. So we're going to go into the questions, and for everyone watching on YouTube or for everyone on the Zoom, please, there will be time for Q&A. This promised to be very exciting, fun. Make sure, you like Abby said in our introductory speech, you get something out of what we're trying to achieve today, and make sure you learn something, and make sure you also not just learn, but take it back to your various organizations and ensure that we push for adaptability in all of our organizations that we represent here on this call today. So question number one, how big of an impact will culture have on the spread and rate of growth of Agile in the Middle East and Africa? Who's going to go for that first? So
I'd like to start.
All right, please go ahead.
So, so if we're thinking about what we are really asking people to do when we bring Agile into organizations, is we're really asking them to go about running the organizations in a completely different way, from a leadership perspective, as well as from, from a operational perspective. And if we look at places where agility works really well, it's generally where we have quite a high acceptance of the fact that we are all equal, all voices are equal, that nobody has more power than anybody else. There are places in South Africa, in Africa, and certainly what I know about the Middle East, where that's not really the case, where there is for various reasons, for colonialization, for people who have had access to higher education, for tribal beliefs, for societal structures, where that's not always the case. So it is asking, to really adopt Agile is asking us to look at the way we relate to one another as human beings, individuals and interactions, that for some organizations and in some countries and in certain societies are quite a big ask. So this is much more than just a process overlay. We've spoken about the being of Agile, much more than a process overlay. It really asks us to relate to one another as human beings in a very different way.
Excellent. Carol, I want your perspective on this, because you've had some time spent over there also around the region. What is your take on this, Carol? On the impact and culture of the rate of which we're growing?
Yeah, I'd say it have a huge impact, definitely. Just piggybacking on what Antoinette has expressed, because, traditionally, we're people that are trained not to speak when our elders are speaking. We're trained not to talk when others are talking, because you don't want to express your mind, because you don't want to sound confrontational. So you try and keep your thoughts to yourself. And a lot of times the structure of the organizations are also arranged that way. So you have organizations that are hierarchical, they are flat in nature, so people have to follow the ranks, to be able to speak up. So obviously that is a different perspective from what Agile preaches. So of course you have to start discussing those discussions around the culture first, because that's a huge part of the barriers that we face when we're taking Agile to teams and to organizations. So definitely I believe it has a huge impact, and those conversations have to start early enough, because that's where the real work is.
Excellent, Carol. So I hear you say hierarchy, organizational hierarchy, and some cultural issues around the Middle East and Africa is still there. And we have to find a way to create the right balance, to ensure that we are growing at the right pace. Good job, Max. What do you think about this, Max?
Thank you. I think that culture is everything, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast along with everything else. And from what I've seen happen in 20 years is that culture is about the people. If you can motivate and empower your people, there is nothing they're not able to achieve. I've seen it firsthand with these folks in Amazon. It is incredible how before they even say good morning, they start to talk about how they're going to take market share from everyone in the online grocery space. They were number 10 in 2016, number 1 in 2018, and now in 2020, when the numbers come out, they will be half of the industry. And this is just because their people feel empowered. They're not smarter, they're not more capable than anybody in Lagos, Abuja, etc. They just feel empowered. So if you can implement a culture of empowerment, which our keynote speaker spoke about, Daniel Pink, the book he wrote, Drive, about autonomy, purpose, mastery. If you can do that, you can achieve anything.
Excellent. I hear empowerment from what Max is saying. And I was smiling very, very, very much because I know the power of empowerment and what that, how that can go a long way in creating the right environment, the right mindset, especially, and the right culture, and then ultimately building trust. And as we know, Agile, it's a methodology that is based on trust. Visibility and trust is very, very key in the Agile practice. Ade Shokoya, what do you think?
So I think culture is always an interesting one, because when we talk about culture, what are we talking about? We're talking about complex adaptive systems, right? So it's a complex area. I think I would like to decouple it from necessarily looking at from the generalistic culture. What do I mean by that? And some of the other panelists will know exactly this as well. We work with lots of companies in America, UK, and other European and Western societies. And some of the issues the companies have with implementing Agile successfully is because their cultures don't align. All the things that we just heard there, they don't have respect for people, there's command and control, there's hierarchy. They exist at the organizational level. The organizations that are doing well are the ones who change their culture, or naturally their organizational culture, regardless of the wider culture, aligns to the Agile principles. Individuals' interactions, empowering people, creating the trust, all the things that you're talking about. So for me, yes, that may be in some areas of Africa, but that does not necessarily be a hindrance to the organizations who want to demonstrate this, because what we're talking about is at the organizational level. So I think, yes, it can be a challenge, but I don't see it as being a major challenge because we see it over here. And yes, it is a major challenge over in these places as well, whereby you might argue that their cultures, maybe the wider cultures might be different.
All right, good stuff. I still hear a lot of, creating that right culture, and also, because the world is basically a global village now. So when you think about Agile and you think about the work we do every day as IT professionals, it's very cross-functional. We work across the globe, different teams, even same teams, but I can be in a team, but all my other team members are scattered all around the world. So you can see the significance of culture and how that ties to the to agility generally, in ensuring that it becomes a successful model of practice for organizations. So I think culture is very key, and I can hear a lot of the panelists talking about culture. So I hope our participants are listening. Just one of our rules for the day, for all of the panelists, please try not to respond to the participants for now. There is a Q&A session afterwards, and we will have some time for the participants. So this session is really interactive and making sure that we are sharing all of the informations and expertise of the panelists, to our participants and all of our viewers on YouTube. And then we're going to have a Q&A session for our participants when that time comes, okay? Adi, what do you think? So we're still talking about culture and how this relates to the rate of growth of Agile in Africa and in the Middle East. What's your thought on this, Adi?
Yeah, my thought on it is I'm in total agreement with empowerment being a key thing, because I've in the course of my career, I've worked with, suppliers, third parties, organizations, suppliers of IT services based in India. And they have that similar culture of deference to those in seniority and hierarchical organizations. And what I used to see in managing those teams is that sometimes velocity of delivery and deployment would be slowed down because people were looking for somebody else to make those decisions. And I saw firsthand how, empowering those teams and, bringing to bear the agile principles, providing them with the resources that they need to develop that confidence to make an impact. But one of the things I'm also seeing is that the world is is shrinking, and that what we're calling culture is changing. So many of the founders of some of these startups that we have in Africa, they've schooled abroad, they're setting up startup organizations that have less rigid structures. And really those companies that, founders who are average, median age, they're younger than the norm, really have a very big role to play in sort of setting the tone. And I appreciate that Agile will come in different flavors for different industry verticals, but that could really be helpful in influencing the culture or the change of mindset that's needed. The other thing I would say is working in the UK, that you can't even assume that the West are really great at taking on Agile. There's something that change.
Exactly.
Humans are resistant to change. And so, it's really in like maybe the Scandinavian countries, and you're seeing them really setting the tone in terms of Agile outside of IT. They have flatter organizations, but even they need to make some, cultural changes. So we can't assume that we Africans are handicapped because of culture. Asia have done it, and they have some of those, some cultural issues to circumvent, to really transform. So that is my 2 pennies, really.
Okay, good stuff, Adi. I mean, there's just two powerful things, or about three of them, that I keep hearing: culture, mindset, and of course empowerment. And I mean, these are all very key stuff that I know speaks to Agile practices a lot. Danny, did you want to add something before we wrap this up?
I knew Miles wanted to go first. I don't know, Miles, or do you want to
You
go?
got it, Daniel. You got.
I was just gonna say,
you reserve the best for the last, Danny. Why do you want to spoil this gig for me?
All right. I said, when we talk about culture, we need to look at a broader spectrum. What is culture? We're in a generation right now that is a TikTok, Instagram, social media generation. The guys who used to basically run organizations before are no longer the same kind of mindsets and people. You used to top-down command and control approach. In the era we're in right now, let's think about what is it that is actually bringing value and then solving a problem. A compelling vision always goes before culture. When people can buy into the vision and buy into the understanding of either the urgency, the necessity, the sustainability of what it's solving, then it becomes meaningful, and people begin, regardless of culture, to appreciate the adoption of Agile, and then it becomes infectious and organic. It's just simply like Uber. If you basically refer 5 people, you get another Uber ride. If you refer 10 people, you get the same way you basically have deals that go on Amazon and stuff like that. Shop for this. When people see culture changing in an organization, that's eating it for breakfast, but then it becomes infectious and becomes organic, and everyone would want to do it. How did you guys get so quickly? How did you grow so fast? How did you become the Ubers, the Facebooks, the Google? What was it you did that we're not doing? And how can we adopt and change? And then when you realize that your competition out there is actually likely going to eat your market share, and I always use the case example of iPhone and Nokia, if you're not looking at time criticality and the need to innovate and adopt to change quickly, you become redundant and obsolete, and nobody wants that. So what we need to be coaching and educating and engaging leaders and organizations is, why is this important for your organization? Why is there a need to change? And how can we help you in that journey towards agility? And how can we help you? And that will start with a compelling vision to understand we can get mosquitoes to mate and then solve malaria. We can get drones to actually take malaria tablets to, areas that are, out of reach to the normal guy on a bicycle, and they would solve problems. So we're solving problems, and that's it. The pandemic has only just highlighted things that have already been there. But right now in Africa, poverty, how do we solve that? What is it we need to do? That is the vision, and that is what will change culture if we basically go forward.
Awesome, awesome, Danny. Let me quickly take a response from Louisa, and then, like I said, I will take the last one from my friend from Johannesburg. Louisa, can you just share your thoughts? 10,
Okay.
15 seconds.
Okay, so thank you, Omo, with regards to the question about culture. As all the panelists have said, culture is really big, but I'm trying to bring this to the African context, as Antoinette was saying, where there's a lot of power structure. So if we come and we're trying to do change in Africa, we need to bear that in mind, because you need to start thinking about, how do I let the leader understand that being a leader does not mean that you have to stand in front and order people and command and control? How do you let them understand that it is empowering to be a servant leader, to be at the back of your room and let all the people that work with you stand in front and showcase the work they've done? Because when they do that, they're showcasing how good a leader you are. I think that's the kind of culture we should try to inculcate in the organizations we work in, because without the culture changing and changing the right way, we wouldn't be able to get Agile across. That's me. Thank you.
You're spot on, Louisa. And, you know, I keep smiling because some of us live these every day, you know, across the globe, across the region. And I mean, ultimately, it's the mindset. It's the mindset. Are people, or, you know, organizations, are they willing to move, you know, or shift from their comfort zone to a zone, you know, that is unknown? So I mean, if you are a boss, if you are used to be a bossy person, are you ready to be a servant leader? You know, so these are the real questions, real hard talk that, you know, we'll be talking about in this series and in all subsequent series in Africa and in the Middle East. So it's very interesting the way you put it and the way the way you've talked about it. And I will be, you know, very delighted to hear more of how we go beyond always saying these things and the real action to shift the mindset in the Middle East and Africa. Okay, Mars, now for you. So wrap this up for us.
All right, thanks, Omar, and thank you. I just want to pick up on what Louisa said as well, which is so critical about the servant leadership. And I think one of the things that we tend to not focus on when we talk about servant leadership is, how do we create psychological safety for leaders to transition from command and control leaders? I often talk about, you know, when you ask a leader to move from command and control to servant leadership, it's sometimes like asking a hyena to become a Labrador. They have been trained to be command and control. They have been incentivized to be command and control. And then one day I tell you just to switch it off and suddenly become a servant leader. So we need to create that psychological safety for them to move towards servant leadership. And that's a critical point. Just the last thing I wanted to say, I acknowledge about the potential paternalistic structures we have in many of our countries in Africa, but there's also another part to Africa that is really encouraging from an Agile perspective, that's that we're very collectivist as a society. That means that we look after each other as societies, whereas Western societies tend to be more individualistic. African, Asian societies are very collectivist, which actually lends itself very much to teams and agility. But we've got to break that hierarchical, you know, paternalistic structure, not only in Africa, but in Middle East as well.
Wow, Mars, I said it before, I knew I was going to get something completely different from all of the panelists. So I never thought about, you know, also trying to do something to help the leaders who have been trained to be in command and the bossy and do what they have to do, and they're used to, you know, the power thing and all of the bossy thing. And then all of a sudden you're telling these folks, come on, become a servant leader. You're going to come into the meeting, it's a scrum team. You know, it's not your say anymore, it's the say of the team. So I think that's a really, really, really good, good insight. It's a good perspective that we need to think about when we go back to our organization. For me, I think one of the easiest way to achieve that is to build trust. You build trust, you know, and just, you know, reassure the leadership team that, you know, you can deliver. You can assign what, you know, within the team, and you can just do everything that you need to do to become a successful Scrum team. I think once they get that assurance, once they have that assurance, they will begin to maybe pull out some of the elements and strings of the bossiness and the, you know, the hierarchy thing and all of that, and participate more in giving their real expertise, seeing themselves as part of a cross-functional team rather than seeing themselves as managers and directors. So that's a really brilliant perspective to how we can actually change the way we do things organizationally. So thank you for all of you who have commented and have answered questions. So we'll move to the second question. I would like Segun Adeniyi, my colleague from AFF, to start on this, because I didn't call your name in the first question. So you better be ready for the second question.
I've already left out.
Are we seeing any adoption of Agile practices in the public sector today? And how can we begin to create those engagement to drive the delivery of the kind of value that we know Agile is capable of within the public sector and the government sector? Of course, you need to understand that they're both different type of sectors. Segun Adeniyi, please.
Thank you, Omar. Good evening once again, everybody. I think, Omar, I think my immediate response is we are seeing some adoption. And by that, what I mean is we're beginning, at least in my sector, my industry, we're beginning to get a couple of engagements with government functionaries, inquiring around how they can drive transformation within their organization, around how programs are delivered and how some strategic objectives are set out for execution. Examples of those are, I know within the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, we're in conversations around how to form a partnership that could be mutually beneficial. I understand and I believe that within some financial services regulatory organizations, they are already adopting Agile. So I think, the short answer is we are seeing an adoption. It's not at the velocity that we would like to see, but it is happening. Now, how can we start to drive the delivery? How can we create more in that space? I think there are two things that jump at me. And one is for us that are Agile practitioners to celebrate more of our successes and communicate some of as many positive angles of our failures as possible, so that people can learn from them. And that would be in, these sort of fora that we have, being deliberate around workshops that we can set up with the public sector. And then, of course, involving them in collaborative projects where, for example, we are inviting a regulator or someone within the public service to own, into the capacity of a product owner, so that they can, witness firsthand how the Agile process can help them and how effective it is in what we do in the private sector. So that's two ways from my perspective, us being deliberate in how we communicate and also bringing them into what we do in the private sector, thereby driving more collaboration and helping them see the effectiveness of Agile.
Awesome, excellent. Thank you, Segun, for that very elaborate answer. How did you pull that string? I know you did the one of the largest disrupts activity in Africa that I ever saw. The attendance was huge. Did you think about bringing public and private sector? I mean, I saw all of the distinguished speaker at that event. I mean, how was that so much of a success? Do you want to share some of that insight before I take another answer from another panelist?
Yeah, I can can share some. I think, regardless of how many I talk about, how many things led to the success that you reference, it's important. I think nothing would have happened without partners. We really rode on the wings of partners. We leverage partners across various industries and sectors, and that helped us in achieving at least two things. One was being able to galvanize the attention and interest of the specific target audience, being the technology enthusiasts, investors in the space, technology advocates, startups, and then of course, practitioners from various industries. That was one way. The second way was also in the agenda of the event. It was important for us that if we had a spread of audience as I just mapped out, it was important to make sure that that spread was fed properly with activities in the agenda that was of interest. If you recall, we had a number of panel discussions. We were very deliberate around what the subject matter would be. We were very deliberate around who the panelists were and what part of the industry or the audience they would represent, and all together that helped us to put together an enriching event.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Segun. Miles, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think a couple of one I've been dealing with Dubai Customs, which are definitely on an agile journey, and I spent some time with them earlier in this week where we were talking about the opportunities that what I call the new abnormal has brought for them. So not even the return to normal or return to the new normal, but to the new abnormal. So they are definitely going down the line of agile in Dubai Customs and port authorities, etc. But I think one of the things that comes to mind for me when we're looking at agile in public sector is this is when it really becomes an issue of you can only be as agile as your least agile department. Because at the end of the day, when we're looking at public finances, we need more flexible budgeting when we're doing agile. And that's going to be one of the bigger hurdles that we're going to have to get over, is how do we get our governments and our public sector organizations, and obviously it's a battle we have to win, but how do we get them to be more flexible around how they spend public money? And I think that's going to be one of our bigger challenges.
Wow. All right. That's good insight from Mars. Thank you very much, Mars. Louisa?
I believe that there's a rise in it, because if we start even in the UK, you have the DVLA, Ministry of Justice, a number of the police as well, that have already picked up Agile. And when it comes to me, to be honest, I try to make sure that, in my opinion, the Agile adoption is a playing field wherever you go. I wouldn't say Africa is any different or any unique, because I believe we all have the same capabilities. But then coming to an African context, I'm always excited to read about what the Rwandan government is doing, and hearing that they do stand-ups in the morning and everything in the government. That is amazing. Going down to Ghana, I worked with the Ghana police when they started their Agile journey. I wouldn't say it was an easy journey, especially incorporating it there. But then, for example, when we did the first training with the guys, within, was it a week or two, they had already started doing an app for application online for the new recruits. So it definitely is possible. We can do it, but in such a situation, I wouldn't recommend that we go big bang to do the change. Even with the Ghana police, it was a small group in a small corner, gradually doing the change. So when you come there, you have to be as agile as you would ever be to be able to incorporate it in, because you would have a lot of skeptics, but it is possible. I know also that at the moment, the Ghana Port Authorities has also incorporated Agile, so it is possible. And I'm excited to see what else we get to do in the public sector space. Thank you.
Awesome, 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 Louisa. Thank you. Danny, go ahead. I'll take you last and I'll go to the next question.
I was just gonna say, let me just give you a very plain example of what Agile is in the public health sector. Your daily update of COVID-19 data, that's Agile. that comes every day to tell you the number of cases of infections. And it's also happening in Africa, it's happening in the Middle East. That is the public sector example of what agility is and what it means to be agile. We're not talking about doing Scrum or doing Kanban, but we're talking about the ability to respond to change on a daily basis. That is agile, you know, right. The mindset, you know, so that is already happening at the national level in public sectors within the Middle East and Africa. Every country is updating. The World Health Organization, that is agile. Now, how do we build on that and take it to the next level? In the UK, for instance, I know we've done several things where we have different frameworks and everything, but also in Africa, I do know, like my other sister is a practicing medical doctor in Nigeria, where they basically look at, you know, the number of even health professionals who have been infected or in contact with, and then they do a 15-day timeline and a daily update as to, are you still sick? Are you okay? Are you ready to come back into the office? That is agile in its simplest form. So we say that we're already doing agile in the public sector. How do we now take it into other arms of business, such as, you know, the Ports Authority, with National Maritime and all of that? It just all has to do with, like we said, the leadership, the culture, the change. And when you do a daily status update, that is in itself a form of agile, you know, just looking to say exactly, where are we on the journey or on the budget or on the progress of what we're doing? You know, if we take things in little baby steps, moving from 3 months to giving daily updates to 1 month, moving to 1 week, moving to 1 day, that is agility already in its baking and in its infancy.
All right, thank you very much, Danny. Thank you. That was very insightful as well. Third question, technology and software have become critical components of businesses and organizations across almost every imaginable industry and vertical. Are we seeing a shift from the typical traditional project management method or methodology, if you want to say, more to the agile practices among organizations outside the software and technology space? Carol, what do you think about that?
Yeah, very interesting question.
I hope I didn't catch you off.
No, sure. I kind of knew this would come to me because I come from a traditional project management background. So yes, in software development, definitely we're beginning to see the shift. And it's because of the whole digital transformation landscape requires that you just have to be agile. So even organizations that really don't want to be so just have to be, because the speed of competition is too fast. Customers' needs are changing at lightning speed, and you have to be able to respond to it. And Agile gives you the tools in your arsenal to be able to do it. When you combine the mindset and the technology and the skills, you're able to do that very quickly. So, but as for the speed at which these organizations are evolving, there are differences. So some have started the journey. Some are, are saying, okay, I'm just testing the waters. I'm like, okay, fine, maybe we'll just make our software development team agile, but the rest of the organization will be waterfall, So you have different variants, agile and all kinds of variants that you see happening in those spaces, but I think the call is for everybody to just go fully in. Because what you see in those organizations that are just testing the waters is that there may be efficiency in some parts of the organization, but the other parts are losing out. And Agile is best served when the entire organization is on board with it. So yes, it has started in software, and the software kind of lends itself so easily to Agile. So that's why you see more of it there. But I see more sectors going that way now. So, Daniel just talked about healthcare, and healthcare is there, education, retail, even the retail space. I see those industries being the next that will move into that space of Agile, particularly in West Africa and in Nigeria as well, and also in the Middle East as well, because of the fact that you just have to, the customer needs are moving too fast. You have to adapt, and the only way you can do that is by using Agile. So definitely it has started.
All right, awesome, Carol. Thank you. Antoinette, you like to add something?
So one of the most exciting places I've seen where agility is being asked for and and is evolving is in the clinical research. In the clinical research area. So last year I was coaching a section of a big pharmaceutical. And what's been really interesting for me in COVID is when I worked with the groups there, you know, the mean time to go from a molecule to a medicine is about 10 years. So all of a sudden, these companies have not, I mean, they've known that they need to become more agile in their processes for a while. That's, you know, that's why it started last year. But all of a sudden, they're now really forced. I mean, we cannot wait for 10 years to get a vaccine against COVID. So it's been very interesting for me to watch the seeds that have been sown in the past there. What is happening when you know, the world is changing so fast around us that we have no choice. So that's, and to me, COVID has really been a blessing in that respect. It's an awful thing, you know, it is really an awful thing. It's a horrible thing. I hope that it goes away very quickly, but it's really forced a lot of organizations to truly think about if we go from where we have the idea to where it actually ends up in the hands of our consumers, especially in companies where their job is to save lives. How is the quickest way? You know, what can we do? And they're turning to agile ways of production flow, agile ways of working, agile leadership, all of that more and more in those industries. So for me, it's long since gone out of the technical sphere.
Thank you, Antoinette. Good insight there. Yeah, as bad as COVID is, but COVID has taught the entire world some lessons. And I think there's a lot to learn from what has just, I mean, the entire pandemic situation and that we've all gone through. I hope we see some light out of all of the darkness and, you know, and make use of that positively moving into the future. Adi?
Yeah, so yeah, I like the previous speakers have said, it's moved out from the IT domain for many organizations long time ago. I've worked with a retail organization that produces non-IT products and is using Agile and different Agile frameworks to deliver their services. As we know, the business context is changing so rapidly. Companies need to innovate really fast, but organizations are turning to Agile to be able to innovate in an iterative way. So release products in an iterative way, test the impact on the market, and begin to enhance that product with the information that they get back, right? So organizations, rather than whether they're IT or non-IT, are adopting Agile approaches to just test the market and get that valuable feedback rather than go for a big investment and you know, incur lots of costs. Because what's happening is new markets are emerging, new customers that organizations are just beginning to learn about what those demographics mean and what are the implications for the kind of products that they will provide. And so what we're finding is that you know, Agile is being seen as a solution to delivery and delivering value sort of early, rather than the traditional project management approach, which is, you know, delivery of value at the end of maybe a 6-month to 12-month period.
Excellent, Adi. So I hear you clearly saying that value can be derived iteratively, not just waiting up until the end of the life cycle of that project before you start to enjoy some of the hard work of the team. So good stuff, good insight. And I think, I mean, that's just the future, because when you think about it, if you're going to go traditional all the time in every single project, your competitors would have, some of my colleagues will say, they would have grandchildren and great-grandchildren before you can even start walking. Okay, that's what Ebert MD will say, Ebert Wigway will say, oh my goodness, you guys are going to hold me ransom. By the time you are done, everybody else in the world is going to have great-grandchildren and grandchildren. And when my product go out, it's just going to be a baby looking for milk. So the only way to survive is to, you know, move with that speed and, you know, stay innovative and ensure that
we deliver value iteratively. Max, tell me what you got.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to answer this in two parts. First, yes, Agile has come out of IT. It's been there for a while. And this is not because people wanted to do it and it's cool to do. It's because it's a necessity. The world as we know it today is changing faster than it ever has in the past due to technology, disruption, and all of these. Where I've seen it most in my 20 years in IT, I've always been on customer-facing applications, on the websites, the apps, and everything. And our marketing folks, our product managers, have created UX design teams that respond to customer hits and traffic immediately as soon as the apps are released. New functionality is on the website, and it's data, data, data. They take the data, they act on the data, we redeploy in the same day. I mean, and that is just something that they never used to do before, and now they have to do. So it's just increasing. My second part to this question, and it's almost as a warning to everybody in the Agile community, is that what I've seen also, and I'll create a case study in this at some point, is that nowadays, a single person on the AWS cloud with all the Amazon tools that there are can do development, can do business mapping of their stories, can do security testing, penetration testing, everything, one person, right? So nowadays, we have to even prepare people that are coming up into this Agile world in Nigeria, in South Africa, and everything. Say, it's not enough to just code now. It's not, because as our keynote speaker said, the fourth industrial revolution is here. And with that, AI is going to learn to code too. So it's not enough to code. You have to be able to code, to understand business mapping process, read data from the marketing sites, do all these things. And maybe if we can prepare the people that are coming through the ranks in Africa, we can leapfrog what some other traditional Java, full stack developers, .NET. But for this, we really have to take Agile to another tier of adaptability at the individual level. And this is going to be our new frontier in a lot of ways.
Excellent, Max. I mean, just think about all of the things happening today that we never thought would happen today. Like you rightly said, I mean, you were spot on to say that the world is moving so fast, rapidly. Who thought AI would be what it is today? I mean, who ever thought we would have cloud infrastructure in this world today? Today, we are talking about Azure, we are talking about AWS, and we're talking about all of this cloud infrastructure for storage and for even the typical most basic project management things that we did before. So, I mean, if anyone is still sleeping and not ready to move with time, so for you to come and tell me that, oh, you need to bring a server to the bank or to the software company, you need to provision the server, you need to get some air conditioning to make sure the servers are cool. If you're in Africa where, you know, I live, you need a 24-hour generating system, you need to get diesel or fuel just for storing data. But look at the beauty and I mean, it's amazing what cloud can give us today. So anyone who is not ready to adopt change is not ready for Agile. It means the mindset that is required for Agile thinkers is not there. And I will struggle and argue with that person to see how much progress they can make in today's world. So good insight, Max, and I think that was a very brilliant contribution. Danny, I'll take one more answer from you, and then we'll move on to the next question. Danny, go ahead, please.
I want to be very careful. There are some things that would always be done in a traditional project way.
True.
There are some things that you would not move into Agile. So let's just make sure, you know, that when we transfer knowledge, we also don't transfer error. One of the key things that I always tend to tell people is, why do you want to pivot to Agile? what is it? Why, because I work in infrastructure teams and I work in, hardware and stuff like that. And some of these teams, based on the way actually they've got their CapEx and OpEx spending, it's just set up in a way that even though they want to be agile, because of the structure and the financing and the funding, it's very hard for them to pivot to agile. So hence the reason why traditional project management complements agile. Now, agile in itself is not an enemy of traditional project management. It is actually a complement to moving faster. And the two key things is always business agility is always looking at, value and outcomes. In terms of technology, right? We said we would value people and processes over tools and collaboration. If I have a simple Post-it note and a whiteboard behind me, I can be agile without needing a cloud space. So let's make sure that in the narrative of when we're explaining agile, it's all about the people and the processes and the collaboration towards a journey of successful outcomes, which is all about customer centricity internally and externally. For instance, a HR system that needs replacing, internally, your customers are your HR department using it. Externally, it would be the people they want to hire. So how do you bring that, So in terms of technology and software, yes, it started from technology, but right now it's a mindset, it's a movement, and it's an adoption that is gone into so many different iterations where there's lean, there's Kanban, there's several things. So it's what we need to be aware of.
Correct. Danny, you're spot on, and there's definitely things that the typical traditional methodology would work better, especially if they are less unknown. They're very straightforward, and but I still, we're going to have a conversation around this topic in another session, another day. I think I don't think there's literally nothing Agile will not work for, but you've said it very well that it will complement the traditional way of doing things. Because again, I think that there are broader aspects to that conversation, whether or not Agile will work for a law firm, as to whether it works better for software engineering firm, whether it works better for a bank or it works well for a KPMG or the Big Four consulting. Another day we'll have time to digest into that conversation and create that balanced mindset of how we can actually complement Agile and the traditional way we have always done things in the past. We move on to the next question. Agile has gained, please listen very carefully. Agile has gained recognition mainly in the software and technology industry. So it's like we knew that this was going to be the next question before Danny answered. He was the last person that answered the previous question. Agile has gained recognition mainly in the software and technology industries. In what industry do you think Agile is going to take hold of in the next big way? So this is going to be like a sneak peek to the actual fight and conversation we're going to go when we have it in a bigger. So you know what? I'm going to start from you, Danny. Tell me, what do you think?
Well, I think basically right now, healthcare, and I give you the same example, Elon Musk. Elon Musk's customer used to be basically the guys who could afford Tesla. When the US government mandated that they needed to produce, ventilators to save human lives, they had to pivot into something new. That's agility. Now, in COVID era, what's the next big thing? We see a fundamental problem with the supply chain, PPE, facial masks, drugs getting out, logistics and everything. So for me, I actually think that, you're looking at the healthcare service industry, within the public sector and the private sector, where hospitals are now going to be looking at how do we actually set ourselves up for the next likely pandemic, whether it's cholera, Ebola, or something like, COVID. And then moving into that, there would always be music, entertainment, and social media. Those are the three things that basically would continue. But other than that, you still have, because the reason why I said media, everyone has moved to streaming right now.
Yeah.
You know, Disney is now streaming, Netflix is streaming, everyone is moving to a microservices kind of organization. So the future basically is how can we avoid this kind of, you know, the new normal where you don't have to go to a cinema and do popcorns, but basically stay at home and stream and still learn things. We're streaming right now on YouTube. Who would have guessed? Who would have thought?
Spot on, Danny. I think healthcare, yes, it has to be very big anyways. For the lessons that we've now learned with this current corona virus pandemic. I think Agile has crept very much into the American healthcare system. I remember one of the projects I did for Johnson & Johnson, Jason Pharmaceutical, and the New York State Department of Health. And it was all Agile. I mean, they are beginning to think in doing things Agile. I mean, there's still some drawbacks. There's a few setbacks here and there, but a lot of what they do is actually centered around Agile. And like you correctly said, Danny, it's all about the customer. It's heavily customer centric. And so when you start to think about implementing solution that is very, very tied to customer satisfaction, of course, you have to be Agile. Good stuff, Danny. Adi, you want to add something?
Yeah, I do. I think the question is quite interesting from the perspective that it seeks to make a distinction between software industries and other industries. And when you think that we're in an in a digital age, you could almost argue that all industries or organizations are either, software companies or becoming software companies. But I mean, to look at the different verticals, I am thinking what jumped to me, and I really acknowledge what Daniel is saying about the health sector. And I think it's hard to predict, but I'd like to see agriculture, taking a big step with, fourth industrial age that we're in, and really leveraging some of the technology that the keynote speaker spoke about. And mainly because given that nearly 70% of the Nigerian population depends on agriculture as a livelihood, I can see technology really providing the insight to maximize yield and reduce costs, which is quite key for that industry to thrive. I don't think anyone can definitively say which sector is about next to embrace Agile, because there are some other sectors that might be more Agile, sort of friendly, like the telecom sector, etc., and media, as my colleague has just mentioned, and like marketing, consultancies, and different sectors may be more amenable to that. But I'd like to see sort of Agile driving and sort of technology driving those areas, because they are big in Nigeria, especially. I don't know much about the wider continent.
Excellent, Adi. And I hope our participants on YouTube and on Zoom are listening carefully to this very insightful and interesting, thrilling section that we are having. I know we have folks listening in from all around the world. I have people texting me from the UK, I think I got a text from Angola, and someone was trying to call me from Italy, and I have a few friends from America who have joined. Just want to say a big thank you to all of you for joining. And I know people are joining in and dialing out and coming in at different times, and it's okay. But from this panel and from all of us that are your hosts today, we say very big thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think Miles, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I just really liked what Adi said earlier on as well, which is, most organizations today are very much digitally and technology driven. So we're seeing a big move in South Africa, but also I'm seeing it in the US, in Europe, actually anywhere. When you look about it, the financial sector is very involved in terms of the Agile movement. And a lot of banks are asking themselves the question these days, are we a banking company with a strong technology infrastructure? or are we a technology company that sells financial services? And it's those companies that are starting to move to say, we're a technology company that sells financial services, particularly your traditional legacy big banks that have these 30-year-old IT systems that they just won't move off of. They are going to be knocked off their pedestals by the fintechs and the insurtechs. And if they don't adopt this agile mindset fairly quickly, they are going to be, you know, just knocked aside eventually. So speed to market, customer service, all of that becomes so key. And it comes back to Addie's points about, you know, are we now just big technology companies that just offer different services? So we are seeing a lot of that in the financial services industry.
Excellent, excellent, Mars. I think we can actually go on to the next question. I think that's all from the panelists, except anyone. Anthony, I see you. I think you're eager to say something. Would you like to add, or should we just move on to the next question?
We're good. We're good. We're good.
All right, Anthony. Cool. All right. Question number 5. We have a long way to go, so we're going to move very fast. Organizational culture and structure are two big challenges that face organizational agility. How do we go about solving for these challenges? Which do we tackle first? Antonio, maybe you go first. You're mute. You are on. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Finger trouble. So would you mind just repeating the question so that I make sure that I answer you properly?
It's really around organizational culture and structure,
Yeah.
right? Organizational culture and structure are two big challenges, right? We've talked about a few of these before, right? That face organizational agility, you know, holistically, I assume. How do we go about solving for these challenges? And which do we tackle first? Is it the culture or the structure? These are two key components that can lead to a successful adoption of Agile in the Middle East and in Africa. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So when we, you know, most people know about Scrum. When we bring Scrum into organizations, we actually do a little bit of both. So a lot of people maybe don't think about it as such, but certainly bringing in a Scrum Master is fiddling with the organizational structure. Okay, so we're bringing in a servant leader amongst, you know, the existing structure. And that brings about, or it creates it's like the thin edge of the wedge to create a difference in the culture. So in my experience, we cannot change culture unless we change structure, you know, and I don't only mean organizational structure, we have to change organizational structure as well, but all the structural elements of an organization. So for instance, we need to look at the governance in an organization. We need to look at the business processes. We need to look at the way we are, you know, what's our policies and our procedures around everything, including how do we appoint people, how do we reward people, how do we do performance. How do we do performance assessments? So every single part of the organization eventually will have to come up to scrutiny if we want to change the culture. Now, the guys who wield the big guns in this are the leaders, because actually really it's only leaders that can change structure. So if we look at where do we start, we need to start with leaders as well as changes at the grassroots level. Otherwise, what will happen, and we've seen that, you know, so most organizations tend to only really get the benefits that they were looking for from an Agile perspective in kind of Agile 3.0 for them, the third time they really try and adopt Agile. Otherwise, we hit a ceiling. If we only change at the team level, we hit the ceiling pretty soon, because then the rest of the organization constrains it. So to answer your question, in summary, so we have to start with leaders. We also have to start at the bottom. Leaders are the ones that can change structure. If we change structure, that's really the only way we can change culture inside an organization over the long term.
Excellent, excellent insight from there. Mars, you got 15 seconds to add something to this?
Yeah, sure. I'll take 15 seconds. I think that at the end of the day with the org structure, one of the things that we need to look at is how we're structuring our business for pockets of work. So you've literally got run the business, grow the business, transform the business. Run as your normal, keep the lights on. And then how do we also start structuring around growing the markets and the customers that we service? And then transform is literally the disrupt or be disrupted part. And we're not seeing enough structure being allocated to the grow and transform the business. Most of it is allocated to the run the business.
Thank you, Mars. Max, 15 seconds. Tell me what you think.
I'm going to contradict myself because I always think culture is the most important thing, but I have witnessed something that says structure is the most important thing. I say that because I have witnessed what we call in the Amazon world, the 2-pizza team. That means that a team that is only large enough that you can feed it with 2 pizzas, 7 people maximum. And within these 7 people, it's a cross-functional team. Your developer, your development, your testing, your project management, your product ownership, everything is within this team. I have seen teams of 7 people do things that in the past, like 70 people would do. They don't have impediments. They don't have dependencies. You just tell them the goals and they go. Let them create their own culture. Why do we have to tell them what culture to have? They want to work in a distributed way, a co-located way, whatever. Just you create that team and they will just dominate. So structure.
Structure. Excellent. I hear more about structure. And I think that speaks to the core of some of the fundamental issues that we have to deal with to create that enabling environment for us to practice true agility. Ade, do you like to add something briefly?
Yeah, sure. So from my perspective, I think we've got to be mindful that once again, we're talking about a complex thing. Culture, we determine the structure, and the change of the structure and how successful you are with the change of the structure will be dependent on also on the culture. And also you've got so many other different factors, the size of the organization, the type of organization, the politics in the organization, the industry in the organization. So sometimes it could be structure, sometimes it could be culture, sometimes it's going to be both of them, but it's going to have to be an agile mindset and respect and adapt, know where you're at, know what the context is, know what the constraints of the system that you're working in, and then work with that. So it can be either or either.
Spot on, Ade. Spot on, Ade. Ade?
Yeah, I nipped out for a little second just to refresh my drink. So it could be that I'm overlapping, so I'll keep mine really short. I thought I heard what Ade was saying and it resonated with what I was thinking or about to say, that you can't adopt a one-size-fits-all. And typically when working with clients, I would look to see, to work with them to understand the top 3 impediments to achieving their organizational objectives. And invariably, it's going to be a mixture of both structure and culture. Needs to be considered as well. So it's rare that you're going to find an either-or situation. You're usually going to find a mix, but it's going to vary from organization to organization. So that would be it from me.
All right.
Everybody has said everything that needs to be.
Everything about culture and structure. Shegun, tell me something. What do you think? You got 15 seconds, Shegun.
Thank you. I have a slightly divergent view, very similar to Abi and Ade, but still divergent. And the reason I say that is, I'm going to borrow from a quote from Peter Drucker, who's a Harvard management professor, where he says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And essentially what he was saying there doesn't mean that strategy is unimportant, but it's saying culture was a surer route to organizational success. Now, if I take that, forward and think through, trying to create a balance between culture and structure, what I learned from that is that you cannot disconnect the two. They are equally as important, and disconnecting them puts the success of the organization at risk. So my view is, if I had to pick one, I would pick culture, because it will drive the thinking, it will drive the innovation within the organization, it will drive an appetite for success. But my vote would be, or my recommendation would be, both of them are equally as important.
Wow. So we've seen another side, why we understand the significance of creating a structure that eventually will create the right enablement for a culture that will then be, that will embrace agility. Correct. So you can see how they interrelate. If we were going to go more into this debate, I don't think we'll live here today between culture and structure. There's a lot of stuff to talk about culture and structure. So we'll move on to the next question. Thank you, guys. We are moving on, and I hope our listeners everywhere they have dialed in from are excited and they are thrilled. Again, sorry that we are not allowing questions at this time. There is a Q&A section after the panelists have finished educating us with what they know, and just sharing a little bit of their expertise with all of us listening to learn more about agility in the Middle East and Africa and the success and progress that we've made so far. Number 6 question: traditional organizations with hierarchical, I don't know if my English is correct, command and control structures are beginning, I guess that's hierarchy, to see the need to become more agile. What first step would you recommend they take? Adi?
I can answer this.
All right, you go first, Danny.
First steps to take is basically actually know who spends the money and who the decision makers are.
Correct.
That is the first step, because if you're looking at organizational hierarchy and traditional, it's basically there's a key decision maker, and there's a key person likely who is a driver for the need of agility, and those two people are very vital to the success of that transformation, because they're the ones who in the end would actually be looking at the finances and all of that. But where do you start? You start from actually mapping out exactly who the key stakeholders are, whether in the verticals or in the horizontals. Your CIOs, your CTOs, your executives, your business leads, your business sponsors, or your investors. And then understand exactly what is it we're trying to achieve, and why are we trying to achieve this, and what are the timelines. So I always say start with the why. And then when you can do that, begin to actually look at, mapping out, the roles. And I always try to make sure we separate also the fact that the role you wear in Agile sometimes is very different from the title you hold in the organization. So you could be a CTO, but still be a Scrum Master. You could be a CEO, but still be a Scrum Master. So it's all about you understanding why you're going into becoming an Agile organization, and then what it is, and then map those kind of key decisions, the timelines, and also what that roadmap looks like. Because everything within Agile is all about a destination, how we get there, but how we deliver value quickly, more collaboratively, more efficiently, while in the end doing two most important things: making sure that we reduce the cost of delay, and then we also look at opportunity enablers in that transformation.
Excellent, Danny. Excellent, Danny. Ade, you want to add some?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think Daniel, you're just flipping my script, you're a fly on my wall or something. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree with, you have to start with the why, and Simon Sinek, those of you who are familiar with this, always start with the why. And that is where, leaders can, provide some of that clarity, because to drive transformations, people have to understand why it is that change is needed. as well as the factors, understanding what are the organizational goals with respect to the market. And it's when you're clear about that, that's when you can begin to work out what will it take for us to get there. And this is where the the transformation happens, really. You come back to whether the organization is adequately designed to deliver that. So one of the things I do with organizations, aside from facilitating some of those, sessions where we understand the why, the what becomes clear when you apply some techniques like value stream mapping can tell you if you're actually set up to service that market that you're in adequately. But there are a whole host of other techniques to understand, what are the gaps in from where they are to where they want to be. And that is where I would start. And invariably, you'll have lots of initiatives that will emerge from that process, whether that be change to structures or change to organizational design or adopting certain frameworks to get there. So it's not about the frameworks, it's about what is needed. Are we looking for market share? What can help us do that more quickly? Are we not customer focused enough? Are there changing demographics that we're not servicing? What will help us to do that? And yeah, it's really that collaborative working and engaging different layers of the organization to do that.
Excellent, Adi. Very quickly, Mr. Shockhair, just add a little bit to that.
Yeah, so just wanted to add to what Danny and Adi just said there. So yes, find out who the key people are, but also suggest taking another layer as well. Find out what makes them tick. You gotta understand the psychology of these individuals. What's their pain points? What are their spoken pain points? What are their unknown pain points? What is the context that they find themselves in? What keeps them awake at night? Are they a blue thinker? Do they think in terms of numbers? Do they think in terms of risk? Are they thinking in terms of innovation? Because then you're able to speak to them a lot more, then understand the constraint, and then also be able to then position yourself as somebody who can help them see some of the stuff that they're not even seeing, but bring it to them in a way which they can embrace it. And from there, because fundamentally, like we always say, individuals and interactions, and I think it's important that we also bring that to all of these engagements. All of the things we're talking about here involve human beings. So it's really, how do you work with these human beings, understand what they need, and help them on that journey? And to me, that tends to work a lot well, regardless of where that person is positioned in an organization. If you can position yourself alongside them, help them understand where they need to get to, and then work through them. Because also, we also need to understand as well, people have cognitive dissonance. There's organizations who think they need to be here, but that's not where they need to be. And we might be the ones who need to say to them, actually, you don't want to go there. Here's something that we can iterate through and experiment, and using evidence-based management, right? And metrics as well, to be able to show them. So it takes away the emotion to demonstrate, here's the actual real data that supports that you didn't have before, that helps you make better decisions.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. I'll take one more response from Louisa, and then we can wrap up and see what our participants are thinking so far. Louisa, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Omar. So, although I must say most of the panelists have already said the beginning bits I wanted to say, so I wouldn't go through the what, the why, and the how. I think the other thing that is important to note, especially if it's an organization where there's a lot of hierarchy, and I'm saying this based on experience I had with a nice organization I worked with Ade Ishakoya himself. I think it's also very important for the organization to not adopt Agile because it's the in thing, because their competitors are doing it, because it's popular. You have some of them doing that, and they fall into so many pitfalls that it becomes a painful journey for us, the consultants that would come in to do the job. Because if you work in an environment where they think after a month, someone is a scrum master who should go and run a massive team, then you're in trouble, right? And another thing I would also say is that based on experience, that you have those on the shop floor happy to go Agile because they're feeling empowered. The leader reads to the nice economist that says Agile is the main big thing and decides to go Agile, and then they forget about middle management. And that is another problem all by itself. If I start that discussion, I think we would never finish. So I'll just highlight that. I'll just highlight that. Don't, if it's a hierarchical organization, don't miss out middle management, because these are some of the major issues that make such adoption fail, because you get to see a lot of hierarchical organizations failing in this, and these are the tiny little tidbits they overlook, because they think that because someone at the top decided we're going agile and the person said it, that's it, it's going to happen. And then most of all, get good professionals to help you through the journey. Thank you.
Excellent, Louisa, excellent. Once again, thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to our participants listening in from across Africa and outside of Africa as well. I think we are gaining a lot of insight today. We are expanding, the way we think. We are trying to also embrace some of the most brilliant minds in the industry across Africa and on the globe, and try to maybe, be like the Louisas and all of these talented people on the panel list. And, hopefully we can drive the necessary and required changes in our organization, and we can also speak in the same language that they speak. I am learning a lot. I'm actually excited. I'm not on the hot seat of the panelists, so I get to dictate and ask all of these questions. So that's a good learning point for me. I see lots of questions coming in from some of our participants. Mimi Demike, she's asking, can agility help Africa gather an extensive database as strong as that of the developed country? And that's the number one question. That's a brilliant question, actually. And because I think one of the issues in the, I don't like to use the word underdeveloped. Is Victor on the call? Because I like him to answer this one for me. He's been quiet. Victor, are you listening? So I'll repeat that question. Can agility help Africa gather an extensive database as strong as that of the developed country? Or let's say as that of the countries in the West? Because for me, I don't like to say developed and underdeveloped. How do we introduce agile mindset to local organizations in Africa and in the Middle East? And I think that was a question from Mimi. Who's going to help me take that one from the panelists?
Go for it, Daniel. Go for it.
You go first.
Really, all I was going to say, really short and simple, is that there are some surveys that are widely referenced already. The only problem, and I think we were discussing it yesterday, is that the data coming in from Africa, we think is a little bit circumspect. So we're not sure we're getting the true picture. But really, in terms of a benchmarking tool, there are some tools out there, but it's how we get the African and the EMEA sort of section of the world to really sort of feature more strongly, so that we can get a truer picture and begin to see, be able to draw comparisons as to whether we are, can demonstrate improvements with comparison to the rest of the world. So that's my contribution on that. So Daniel, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what is the database meant to do, and why is it needed?
Yeah. I will think, because I also struggle to understand what sort of database for the most basic things even sit in Africa.
Yeah,
you have an ID where you are. I mean, everywhere you go, everybody can say, this is you, this is Daniel. So how do we replicate such standard? Go ahead.
If you're looking for a centralized government system infrastructure that has a national database, for instance, of population census, and then your ID and all of that, yes, it's doable. And that's why we have cloud, AWS and all of that. But the question right now is, what is the purpose of that database? Who are the key people handling the data in that database? And then to what means would you be utilizing the data sets that are produced, by having such a database? Right now you already have examples of databases with your mobile network, such as MTN, Econet, Globalcom, all of those. If you just even took how many people are on Globalcom, that is a database in itself. So when you talk about a singular unified database for the purpose of government, are you using it for surveillance, contact tracing, COVID? What is the reason for the database and why is it needed? Always with the why.
Okay, but do we think any of such database sit, let me say, in Nigeria?
I am not aware of any, and I believe that there could be in the cloud.
Okay, somewhere in the cloud.
Can I come in at this stage?
Yeah, I will also jump in as well.
Please go ahead, Shego.
Okay, thank you. I just want to carry on from where Daniel stopped, which is, I think the question should really be around what problem we're trying to solve. It is very clear, this is my view, it is very clear that we are not likely, at least in Africa, to address the issue of citizen identity the same way that it's done in the West. So it's unlikely that we will have, in the immediate future, robust platforms like the Social Security number and the National Insurance ID number, in the way that they exist in the US and the UK respectively. However, what I'm finding in this part of the world, in Africa, is, there is some innovation that is driving, use of various metrics to construct an ID for a citizen. So for example, in Nigeria today, there are at least two things that can lead you to a unique identifier for a person. One is what I call the banker's verification number, BVN, which essentially speaks to everybody that has a bank account in Nigeria. That could become an identity. The second, which I'm seeing being used even outside of Nigeria, is your telephone number. So many countries, have found intelligent ways to ensure that the allotment of a telephone number is secure, which means, as that process improves, your telephone number, which is your, could easily become a unique identifier. This also brings a lot more relevance beyond the banks. It brings a lot more relevance to the telecommunications industry at large. So, to summarize, my view is that we will not have platforms. We may not have platforms in the same structure as you have in the West, but there is a lot of creativity that I'm seeing across Africa where the problem of unique identification of citizens are being solved.
So let me just quickly jump in there as well. So I think as we're hearing here, I think we've got to be mindful about what agility is. Agility, as you've heard from many of the panelists, is focused on outcomes, right? Solutions. And so what is the problem as you're hearing? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? It's not just everything we just say, oh, we're going to jump in and do agility. If we're talking about creating a database for any number of things, as we established, as you saw in my talk, the technology exists and the minds exist to do it. Depends on what the problem is we're trying to solve.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys. And I hope from the participant who put that question, they have enough answer and clarity on that question. And we have another question from a participant, and I'm going to read this out. I am fighting for equality in the US. I like using Agile values and principles, including ideas like psychological safety and autonomous leadership. These include fighting inequality within the corporate boardroom. Do you think we can collaborate for freedoms to all people like the LGBTQ community, people especially in Nigeria? How do we adapt Agile principle to a social enterprise and non-profit in Africa? Panelists, who's gonna go first? Now we're talking about Africa for this type of freedom. So who's gonna take that one?
Okay, can I just jump in here first? Because it reminds me, so I'll share a little joke. So many organizations, you've heard it before, is when I get into these organizations, some people seem to think Agile is this magic bullet thing, right? That it's just going to change human behavior, human mindsets, human all of that. I think the reality is people are people, and it may not necessarily even be an Agile type solution or answer to that type of question. People are people. Yes, there are elements of the Agile principles and values that we can take on board as human beings. However, there's so many other factors which create the context that you're talking about there, whether it's freedom for gender, race, or whatever some of those issues are. So yes, I think you can adopt some of that. However, fundamentally, always remember you're dealing with people with different contexts, with different issues, agendas, and all the other stuff there.
Excellent. Anyone else want to respond to that?
I would say it's a very sensitive topic, simply because, like Antoinette said earlier on, culture varies by boundaries, right? So, for instance, you're fighting for certain things like LGBTQT, or gender equality. It's basically sometimes at a regulatory policy, sometimes it's at a religious level, Now, the organizational structure, which is maybe your charity or nonprofit organization, may internally be adopting Agile, but on an external front also, it's basically how do you now have conversations that allow for equality and empowering people. So you can now start having, roadmaps and milestones as conversations towards getting there. For instance, educational awareness of what it means to be equal. How do we build a roadmap towards that? That journey takes time. And just like Ade said, sometimes it also goes with cultural barriers. There's certain things. I worked in fashion. There's certain fashion materials and brands that we would never allow to ship into the Middle East and Dubai because it's haram, and we have to respect that. Respect for people and culture is one of the core fundamentals of being Agile. So you need to understand what context and in how are you applying it. And also, what are the legislations and the regulatory frameworks that sit within the organization, and how do you bring that all together to now have a roundtable conversation which may just be the launch pad for a future conversation as to how we get there. So some journeys will take time, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it's impossible. But you just need to understand, it's not a silver bullet, and it's not just basically a wand that basically is like, Disney, get on, this is Agile, we're doing this. No. There are hurdles and there are challenges. And I will tell you, in any organization also, people are resistant to change by nature. So you've got to know exactly, pick the battles and know the ones you can win, and also know the scars that you're ready to have.
Excellent. We have one more question from the panelists, and this is coming from Mr. Chikwebuka Odugwe. I see Max smiling, so I'm going to tell Max to, I don't know if Max is the best person to answer this actually. So yeah, so I'm going to call on Caro. Maybe Caro can help us with this. Do you think financial institutions in Nigeria will ever move away from the traditional project mindset and adopt a product mindset so agile can thrive? A product mindset, a customer-centric mindset, the one that is not always speaking to profit and bottom line. Caro, what do you think? Tell me, Caro.
Very honestly, I think that most organizations have moved already. Maybe it's the circles in which I move, but most financial organizations have actually moved that way. As I said earlier, the customers are so savvy now. They know what they want. So you have no business just offering a customer something that you think is fine, because they have so many options. So they know what is in the market, they know what's available. I mean, we're in a global village, so they know what obtains out there. So most organizations have been forced, most financial organizations have been forced to move to product management standards as opposed to the traditional ones. I think it's happening already, and I think the financial service institution in Nigeria and Africa is way more advanced in certain ways than others across the world because of that. Because digital transformation forces them to have to change. So yes, I see that happening already, and I think that it has come to stay. And I think we're going to even see more of that because a lot of them have changed the way the applications are built. DevOps is not a new thing to them anymore. So you hear different teams adopting DevOps in their applications departments and applications teams in financial institutions. You even see different product labs that are coming up as well, also happening right now. So I think that is a foregone conclusion. I think it has already started and it's way more advanced than the participant is speaking about.
Segun, would you like to say something to that? Would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you. I think Carol definitely has spoken my view on this. I think there is a clear maturity in financial services. There's a clear transition and plan. It's a plan that is already in fruition with a lot of the financial services providers. In Africa, I think I can speak to Nigeria and Africa in entirety on this. I'm seeing a consistency in how, DevOps, for example, is being taken on and how it is measured, how success of DevOps is being measured. I'm seeing a clear focus on transitioning from the traditional way of thinking to more product and customer focus. Yes, it is difficult in that there's a mindset around profits, loss, and revenue that, we are having to uproot. But, it is very clear that, the original or the legacy financial services executives are seeing very clearly that that's the only way they will be successful. So even from a deliverables perspective, there are metrics that I'm seeing now which are around deployment frequency, lead time to success, number of tickets that are resolved, how long it takes for tickets to be resolved. Error rates are being monitored in software deliveries right now. I think we're definitely more advanced than that question seems to suggest, and we're in the roots to get better in it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Segun. Mr. Ebuka Odugwe, I hope that these experts have answered your question and you are satisfied with their responses. We're going to take 2 more questions and I'm going to hand over to the facilitators to take us on to the next action items of the day. This one is very interesting. Please listen because this speaks directly to, I guess, to the core of recent activities. And I think Mars should take this one first, if Mars can hear me properly. More and more organizations are shifting towards remote ways of working and distributed teams. Given that the benefits of Agile are tied closely to co-location, interaction, and collaboration, will Agile adoption be successful given these scenarios? This scenario I just mentioned now in Africa and the Middle East. Mars, what are your thoughts?
Look, I think at the end of the day, this is one of these questions that goes around quite often. And when you look at the research, there isn't any definitive research that says co-located teams actually perform better than virtual teams. It's a reality, especially with COVID-19 and people working from home. We have virtual teams now. We've got virtual teams all over the world. And so I think that, at the end of the day, it's all about the way that it's implemented, the way that it's driven, the way that it's managed, the way that it's embraced. And again, if you were given the option, I guess you would want to have a co-located team, but that's not always the reality. I mean, I think everybody of these panelists that are here work internationally, and we work as part of virtual teams, virtual Agile teams, not co-located teams. So I think definitely that we're going to have to get used to more virtual teams versus co-located teams as we get over this pandemic.
Awesome, awesome. Adi, DK, what do you think?
I think he said it all, really. Ideally, co-location, really the energy and the buzz it creates, that face-to-face. If you've worked with teams that are co-located, the banter and the support that they get, that face-to-face, you can't deny that is the gold standard. But we're in a global village, and many of us work with, multinational companies. Many of us work with suppliers that are based abroad. And so we really have to leverage technology, and preferably, video conferencing technology that allows at least to see the face, because a lot get lost in translation if you're just communicating over email or via text. So what I've found is, just making sure, particularly Scrum framework has got lots of opportunities to engage your retros, your Scrum planning, etc. But even if you're not applying Scrum, just making good use of those Agile principles, being able to learn from what didn't work, and having those shorter iterative cycles. You can use the technology available to really bring the collaboration to do whatever you really want to do, really. So I don't see that, being distributed, in the day that we live in is an excuse for not delivering value.
Awesome, Adi. Thank you very much for that additional insight. Antonia, you'd like to add something to this?
Yes, I'd like to add to what Miles and Adi have said. I actually think that the current situation has necessitated and forces some of the organizations that have been reluctant to let people self-organize, self-manage. The whole COVID situation is forcing them to let go of micromanagement, let go of looking over people's shoulders, etc. So it's an opportunity for us as Agilists to build on that, to to really see how we can, the push that COVID is giving people who have not been able to let go of some of the control they wish they had, or maybe they didn't wish they had let go of. But how can we step into that and accelerate the process and help them gain the confidence to let people do their own thing, make their own decisions without endangering any of the things that happen in organizations that required a lot of control. There's a reason why people command and control. It's because they believe that that's the safe thing to do. So once again, how can we provide the same, manage the risk without the over-the-shoulder looking that we still find in a lot of organizations, either unconsciously or consciously. So
awesome, Anthony. And I think I'll get one more response from Max, and then we can close out this question. Max, yeah, go ahead, please.
I feel very passionately about this, and I feel a little bit different than what the prior folks have said. It's a proven fact that two people standing in front of a whiteboard is the best means of communication. It's just a fact, right? Now, it might be my Nigerian, Italian culture, me, that I'm very in-person, passionate, want to hug people, be around people all the time. In the last 2 years is the first time when I've worked in a co-located environment, as in all the IT team, all the business team, which before the business were those other folks, the product managers. Now we go out for happy hour. We have family day in the office. We build relationships. What I've noticed is that the most successful Agile teams that I've been a part of are ones that have very good relationship. So that when I have a problem on the project, I'm not just talking to a product manager. No, I'm talking to Nikel, who I know her. I know where she went to school. We've had lunch 5 times together. And so all of a sudden, our communication, connection, and relationship gets us to a point where we are not fearful of what you might think or what I might think, and we just get into it. However, I am Agile, and we have to adapt, and the COVID-19 has made an opportunity to adapt. I just hope that we can find a way to enhance and focus on relationships in a distributed way, or maybe have a co-located and a distributed mix of some sort, because it's about building relationships. And that's what I'll end.
Excellent, Max. Again, I'm excited that I'm not sitting on the hot seat of the panelists. I think you guys have done extremely well tonight. You have shared your expertise, insight in some of the hot topics that we think it's very essential in the region and even in the globe today. And I'm really thrilled with the responses that you guys have provided for this very esteemed group today. I want to say thank you for your time, and also thank you to our esteemed attendees who have dialed in from all around the world. They've been part of this session one way or the other. And I just want to say a big thank you to everybody. So I'm now going to call on the IT. I'm going to call on IT to take over from here. Thank you, guys. I do appreciate. Bless you. Yeah.
Thank you, Omo.
Thank you, Omo. Thank you to our esteemed panelists. You guys have done an absolute justice to this topic and all the questions that have been put forward to you. You've made me believe that truly Agile has future in Africa and in the Middle East. You've set the pace for the 4 parts, and you set the ball rolling on a very high standard. I'm not sure what the other parts are going to look like, but right now this will be the session to beat. I'm particularly I've been educated. I've learned a lot from the minds and the insights that you've brought to the table. So we really, again, want to appreciate our panelists. You've done spectacularly well and done justice to every part of the questions and that was put before you. Omo has been saying continually that you've been sitting on the hot seat, but you guys have made the hot seat look so cool. So we're giving you a double thumbs up, a round of applause, fireworks up all here from all of us, the facilitators. We've been so thrilled to have been part of this session. And also we want to say an immense thank you to Omo. Omo has done a fantastic job of managing and anchoring all the panelists, passing around the questions, encouraging, threatening, applying rules, whatever, everything he has taken to make sure that we get this session actually running very smoothly. Omo, you have done a fantastic job, and please don't be surprised if we call on you again to answer all the other sessions. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to everyone that made out time. Special thank you to Shegun. Shegun, we hear that your better half is her birthday today, but you made out time to be here. Thank you. We appreciate you. Please extend our love to the missus. Thank you to everyone that has been taking out time. We'll also finally want to send out our deep appreciation to our sponsors. Agile Alliance, we want to say thank you. Gracious Travel and Tours, Business Agility Insights, Banking, Payments and Context, the Orchard Solutions, and the Abbey Mentors, our sponsors for this session. We say thank you. Thank you so much for supporting our dream. We also want to appreciate our ecosystem partners, IC Agile, Remote Forever, Agile People, 3Line, Africa FinTech Foundry, Access Bank, the Center for Agile Coaching, 3Line, Caleb Consultants, Grace Travels again, Orchard Solutions again, and the Business Agility Institute. Thank you all for being worthy partners. We appreciate you. We remind you again that this is like a marathon for us. It's not a sprint. It's not ending with this first session. We have 3 other parts of the future of Agile in Africa and the Middle East. So we look forward to seeing more partnerships and sponsorship for all the other sessions. So I think what's on everybody's mind now is what next? What's next? What's going to happen after that? And with that, I'd like to invite my co-facilitator, Mr. Tunde Giwa, to take us through what next. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, IT. That was an amazing session as well. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, audience, for being amazing. So the next steps that we'll be taking. I'd like it to be shared on the screen, please. All right. So after this session, we all know this is a 4-part series. And the second series will be on the 2nd of August. So please put that in your calendars and your diaries if you have one. It's a 4-part series. And after that, we'll be introducing to you the other 2 series. Okay, so we also want your involvement, right? We want to hear your stories. So if your organization or business or teams are going through digital transformation, if you're going through a culture change or anything, a technology change, we would like to hear your story as well. So we would like you to share your story. Go to the website, the futureofagile.org. right? And you can share your story there and we'll publish it to the world so that everybody can see what's going on in Africa. Right? We'll also like to see blog writers to come up, bloggers. If you have any posts you like to share with the world, please contact us via the website, thefutureofagile.org. Please go there and you'll see the segment where you can send in your write-ups and your blog posts. Now, this is an exciting one for me. It's the Agile Alliance exclusive membership. So this is a freebie. This was graciously given to us by the Agile Alliance, who is a partner for this event and a sponsor. Right, so they've graciously given us a concession to pay $10 for a 1-year individual membership. I think that's an amazing contribution to Africa, right? So every single one of you on this in this session with us would be able to apply for this, and we'll be sending you the codes from your into your website, into your emails. Thank you. All right. So we would like you to also join our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Look for the Future of Agile on YouTube. Please like our posts. The whole session is running live on YouTube and will also be posted on YouTube. So you can go there and comment and give us your opinion about all the topics that were shared. Now, we also have the Future of Agile membership. We have the membership categories, which are The member category, which is for the sake of this session, will be free for 1 year, right? It's worth $95 US, and it will be free to register for everybody that has joined this session. We also have the associate member category, which is $145 US, and then the full member, which is $205, and you can please go on the website to register and we will contact you. All right, so we have, we will also like you to be aware of our social media platforms. Please follow us, contribute, make suggestions, follow us at all our social media platforms, The Future of Agile, For the Future of Agile, and the Agile Advisor. So we are the Agile Advisor everywhere, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and our email is info@theagileadvisor.com. Thank you very much. I'll pass you over to my co-facilitator, Eliana. Thank you.
Wow. I can't believe the session is about to end, but really it was an insightful session, and I'm happy we all participated. Like Tunde has mentioned, the next session will be on the 5th of August, and I'm sure we'll have an insightful time again. I like quotes, and I like to say this quote by Albert Einstein, and it says, "Strive not to be successful, but rather to be of value." And I know that's one thing that Agile brings. It brings value to people, to customers, to organization, to the entire world of work. And I also like to use the opportunity to thank the facilitators, Tunde, Shoga, IT, and myself, actually. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for attending. We hope to see you all again in the next session in August. I'm sure we'll have more more panelists, more experts, to tell us what exactly is happening in the world of Agile. So thank you very much, and do have a great evening. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Good night.